this episode of the Moviescramble podcast. On today's show, we will be covering the Q&A for the recently released No More Wings, a live-action short film that is under Oscar consideration at the moment. The film regards two lifelong friends, Isaac and Jude, who meet up at their favourite South London fried chicken shop at a very divergent point in their lives. It's a tale of friendship, works its way between past and present and shows how promise, talent and dreams can struggle to actually become reality in the current day. The Q&A, which follows a short extract from the film, features the director Abraham Adeyemi, the producer Abiola Rufia, the cinematographer Olan Kalandri, and the cast Ivano Jeremiah and Paris Jordan. You can find the film on YouTube. Just search for No More Wings. Enjoy.
That you, yeah. I see you shining, fam.
Stop. There goes the gym work, fam.
Never expected you to want to come Morley's. Taste for the finer things in life, no?
No, it's tradition, man. Plus, them fancy places ain't got nothing on Morley's, believe.
Thank you everyone for joining us. We're really excited that you could be with us here. I just want to go across the panel. If you can, first of all, starting with Abby, tell me a bit about yourself and your name.
Hi everyone, I am Abiola Rufai Awojide. I am a producer and the producer of No More Wings. That's me.
Fantastic. Paris?
Hi guys, my name's Paris Jordan. I'm an actor and I play Jude in No More Wings.
Abraham?
My name's Abraham. I am the writer-director of No More Wings.
Okay. And Olan?
Hey, my name is Olan Colliday. I am the cinematographer on No More Wings.
And last but not least, with your fabulous costume?
Ivano Jeremiah, and I play Isaac in No More Wings.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. So let's start off with Abby. We'd love to know what attracted you to this amazing story.
I think for me, apart from the fact that Abraham is an incredible writer, and I resonate with his writing in general, I think for this, it was the familiarity of it, the friendship between Isaac and Jude, that whole sort of idea of being young and all the ideas and exciting things you think you're going to do with your life, that you talk to your friends about, and then being an adult now and sort of really seeing how things have turned out. And of course the ode to South London, where I grew up, and Morley's. It was a few things.
So did you always want to be a producer, talking about what you wanted to do when you grew up?
Absolutely not. It occurred to me a lot later in life that I could be a producer. I think I always had a love for storytelling, I'd always had a love for storytelling, love to write, love to read. And I also really love screen, but I didn't really make that connection until a lot later on in my life. Got to play around with a lot of really amazing creatives that happened to be in my space. And I've sort of slowly worn a few hats and arrived in the last 2 years or so, actually, at being a producer and knowing that producing is where I fit. So, yeah.
And you fit well. So I'd love the actors to tell us, each of you to tell us what attracted you to the script and the characters.
Do you want me to go first? I could do that.
Please go.
Yeah, if I'm honest, just the fact that Abe wrote it. I worked on one of his plays prior to this, and he kind of told me about this project, and from the get-go I was like, yes, I want to be involved. I think it's very special for someone who's so early on in their career like myself to find a writer whose writing firstly kind of represents the world and understanding of where I come from, but also on an artistic level I just love the way Abe's work resounds with me. Anything I've read of his, I kind of tune in pretty organically to the rhythm of it pretty quickly, and so that just gave me the energy to want to be involved in this.
Do you think there's parts of you that you brought to the character, or would you?
Funnily enough, no, I think every kind of character you play, you have to bring a certain element of yourself to it. But interestingly enough, I see myself as more of the Isaac in the situation, and I've brought kind of an amalgamation of my imagination myself and one of my very close friends from home into the character of Jude. So it's interesting in that way,
Definitely. And also, please share.
Yeah, Abe gave me a call and I was bored at the time, and not only hearing a very similar voice on the end of the line, the story, as we were saying before, which completely connected with me on a level, on a cultural level. And I think even from the lookbook, you were talking about amazing films like Boys in the Hood and these sorts of childhood stories that, one, highlight the togetherness of the people and also show their charisma, show the beauty of the place, date it, timestamp it. And I think it was something I couldn't refuse doing. I mean, it was a great offer and I went straight for it.
Would you say you related to the story? I mean, are you really connected to the place that you grew up?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in South London, and it's a tapestry of the place. Do you know what I mean? It's, I guess, the absent character in this film is the socio-economic circumstances and everything else that may or may not be, the pressures that may or may not be felt by the characters, but it's very much there. For example, the rift between Isaac and his best friend, that he is a lucky person who maybe through work or his fortune has gotten to a certain place, but is very much still from that place. And it was quite easy to draw parallels with friends that I've grown up with. And, for luck or, again, work, I feel very fortunate to be where I am, but quite often you do sometimes feel that some of your childhood friends don't move as far or as fast as you do. And that is a particular awkward position to be in.
Have you stayed friends? Would you say that, a lot of your friends, you have gone in different, moved to different points in your life, but you're, still lifelong friends with it, or do you think it's made you move apart from those?
Still lifelong friends, and I think it kind of is the identity of South London in this way that, like, it remembers you remember it, you kind of know everyone. I mean, particularly where I live, you got your big markets, you got your dances that we used to go to, you've got the culture, the style, and it's familiar. I mean, even watching it back, you can I'm flitting back to the sight and the smells circa 2000, running around in my Nike Harachis or whatever it was at the time. Do you know what I mean? It's and then in the film, the music portrays that, and in my mind, I kind of see it in this creamy sepia dreamscape, and I don't think Olan was anything short of that. And his cinematography, it's definitely.
That's a great move into talking to Olan. Thanks for that. I couldn't have done it better myself. So, Olan, great cinematography, I have to say. So what would you say your creative influences are, and how do they influence the way that you work and maybe the process?
I think my approach to the project was always to try as much as possible to keep some purity in the project. Again, I'm familiar with Abe's work, similar to what Abby said. Abe being someone whose art started off in the theatre space, it's all about people and it's all about dialogue. And it's less about, cameras and camera angles and camera tricks. So I think my approach to this, or my influence to this, was how best to ensure that there was honesty and some purity, like I said, to how we approached. It shouldn't be crowded in, like I said, camera tricks, or let's put the camera in this interesting angle. I think it was all about how can we just make the camera some kind of fly on the wall, kind of to see what was taking place in the place. So for me, it was about how can we make sure the camera remains objective and not really picking a side between the two characters, because it's all about this journey that these two characters had undergone in their previous years, and now there was some kind of reconciliation where they'd gone through different paths, but there was this still interesting bond between them, which was South London. It was Morley's. So I think for me, my approach was how best to keep it pure, but like every DP would say, how to still make it cinematic and filmic. And I think that was one of the biggest challenges we had. And to the success of the project, I'm really happy with how it came out. It was pure. It was about the performances, but there was still something that felt, I guess, cinematic, for lack of a better word, that did transport the viewer into this world of a Morley's shop, which was, felt good to kind of see the world through that lens. But then again, it felt very familiar for people, who grew up in South London. It did look like a Morley's shop, but a heightened version of a Morley's shop.
Talking about the story, Abraham, you wrote and directed it. Where did you get the idea from?
I It's an idea that's been in my mind for a few years now, and I hadn't written the actual script or anything like that, but I've just been thinking of two friends who I grew up with. And it started with thinking about those two people, and it extended into just thinking in general about people who I'd grown up with and how we'd all turned out despite having relatively similar opportunities in life, having a similar background. You know, a lot of us came from single parent homes. And I just wondered, why do people turn out differently when they have all the same options? And from there, my brain started to wonder, okay, well, if I was to get these two people who I grew up with, and they met today, and what would those conversations be like? And most importantly, where would that conversation take place? What is the place that would bring those two people together? And there was nowhere that it could have been other than, firstly, a chicken shop. But taking into consideration that I've grown up in South London, it had to be Morley's, which is, for those who don't know, the most famous chicken shop in South London there is. And so for me, I think of myself, I think of my friends, some have corporate jobs, some are on the other end of the, career ladder, and yet they all still love going to chicken shops. It doesn't change. And so that was where the idea came about, just imagining what it might be like for those people to meet today. What would they talk about? What would they think? And how would they see each other, as well as how they would see themselves in the presence of the other person.
Did you base it on anyone you know?
Yeah, to an extent. I mean, both those characters are very familiar, and one is very loosely based on my best friend, and the other is very loosely based on another friend that we grew up with. But there's so much that isn't true about both my friends that are in those characters, and that, the most frustrating thing I ever find is trying to write something that's true as opposed to having the freedom to tell the story I want to tell. So even when I'm drawing from truth and reality, the very first things I start to think of is, right, what can I do to put in these characters to make them not the people who I'm writing about? So a great example is the character who Jude is inspired, the person who Jude is inspired by doesn't have a kid, right? That's a great example. Neither is he a drug dealer, but there were certain elements where they do differ and where they are the same. So yeah, the people I knew was a starting point, but ultimately for me to be able to best serve the story, I have to, stray away from that and reach out into my imagination.
And is that something that means a lot to you, telling stories from home, a place you have a real connection with?
It does, absolutely. And well, once upon a time, I didn't think it was important to me. I've just always enjoyed telling stories, period. But as I've kind of grown as a human as well as a writer, it's become increasingly more important to me. I guess it's because I see that that's where I flourish best as a writer. And that's not to say that, one day I won't write something which is nothing to do with the place that I'm from. But at the same time, I think when I am writing stories that aren't about where I'm from, I still somehow feed my upbringing and my experience and the world that I've grown up in within those stories, which is always important to me, whether it be the geographical sense or in the actual characters and who they are.
So at the actors, I mean, you really did choose two fantastic actors for the leads. Why these two? What drew you to them, and how did you know they were right for the parts?
I'll start with Paris, because Paris was the first person who I casted without anything happening with the script. So I was writing the first draft of the script, and as I was writing it, I was like, you know what, Paris has to play this character. As you mentioned earlier, he was in a play of mine in the past, and I've been wanting to work with him again, but the way I work as a writer and producer and in all my capacities is that, yes, all these fantastic actors, but you always have to cast the right person for the role, because I need to honour them as well as honour the writing. And so in that moment when I knew it had to be Paris, I just put it in my brain. I was like, right, this is who's going to do it. And thankfully, X amount of months down the line, when everything was ticking, Paris was available. He was at that time actually in a play at Edinburgh, but he so very generously made the time to take time away from the rehearsals to come and shoot the film for us across 2 nights. And so that was the case with Paris. And then with Ivana, as well as the other 2 actors, I was sent. We had a casting director called Heather Baston, and she presented the actors to me. And the first person I needed to cast before anyone else was the other adult who Paris would be playing alongside. And I gave a very loose spec. The character had to be black. I got given a bunch of black actors. I was like, you know what? I think I would prefer someone who was a dark-skinned black man, because that was important to me to show the different shades of black on screen. That's so often when we only see one version of that. And so that was important to me, as well as seeing the people. And when Ivana was presented to me, I was like, well, this was great. This is an actor I actually like. And what made it even more amazing, firstly being presented with someone of Ivana's talents, but in addition, it was when Ivana and I spoke before he'd agreed to do it. He phoned me up and we just had this amazing conversation. And I can't think of a better way to word this other than I remember thinking to myself, oh, right, like he's gang. He's one of, like, I could tell he was from where I was from, and he's from the same kind of, but despite us never having met, I just knew that we could connect. And so it was a total joy when he said yes. It was even more, I remember it was a morning, and I don't know if I remember this, but I think he had messaged me at like maybe 5 or 6 a.m. And I'd waken up to these messages, because at this time I kept waking up at 6 a.m. And I'd waken up to these messages where he's asking me all these questions about the characters in the script. And if I wasn't already sure he was the right person, in that moment I knew. I was like, this is how much you care about this project and what you're prepared to bring. So, it was a total joy in the case of Ivana and Paris to have them on. Like, I'm in no doubts about Paris's talent, as having worked with them before. And what I didn't know until the first day of rehearsals was that they actually knew each other, and that was a joy. And that, of course, I imagine helped the chemistry flow even quicker. And once we'd cast those two, we then found the young boys. I was presented again with what they called tapes, audition tapes of actors. And for me, the most important thing, first and foremost, was performance. I needed people who could deliver, and we just got so incredibly blessed in that the actors who I thought were the best also looked like our adults. And I was like, because I was so
They
prepared.
really do, though, don't they? I'm sure that all of you will think that. It's quite unbelievable how much they look alike.
And I was so prepared to have the cast people who didn't look like, because I would rather have the good performance than have someone who looks great, but you can just tell that they're not performing well. And they were just brilliant. And I remember the first day when we had all 4 of them in rehearsals, and it was so beautiful how, despite the fact that they're not really in any scenes together in the film, bar that one significant moment, how they were feeding off of each other, and having them all in that room definitely helped in them understanding who they were. It was brilliant. And that was the casting process.
So Ivana and Paris, you can tell us a bit what it was like working with Abraham. You can spill all your secrets. and also, what was the rehearsal process like?
I mean, first of all, the rare pleasure of having a rehearsal process, which kind of says a lot about the director and the measure of the man, that his attention to detail was next to none. And I think as watching it, you probably learn that in a couple of seconds. Already, the atmosphere in that room, in the rehearsal room when we were preparing for the film, was amazing. And I think it made the shoot so much easier. Sorry, I'm being interrupted. Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, you have to repeat the second part of your question.
And so what was it like working with Abraham, and what was the rehearsal process like? So what was it like working with the director?
Abra's also an actor and a talented all-rounder. So again, that sensitivity and no flab feedback made the work so much easier. It's someone who knows what they're saying, what they intend to do, and gives you the space to experiment. And hopefully that related on screen.
Thank you, Paris.
I mean, I think Ivano stole my answer, but honestly, as I said, having worked with him before, I kind of knew what to expect, and the clarity in his direction and shape and image for the project. I think just walking into a room, having known, like, I've got confidence in the script, I walk into a room with some great actors, obviously knowing Ivano, what he does. It was just easy. That's the way I explain it. Easy. Like, we went in, it was swift, organic, and it just kind of flew. And the next day we were shooting, so it was brilliant.
Amazing. And Abby, let's talk a bit more about you. So, how did you actually get into filmmaking? As it wasn't, as you mentioned earlier, it wasn't your original career choice. What drew you to filmmaking?
I think, like I touched on earlier, it's just storytelling, just the want to tell stories, to watch, to listen to stories. I think I met Abe, when did I meet you, Abe? About 10 years ago. We both went to Brunel University with a lot of other really amazing creative talents. And while I was there, I got to sort of just have fun and create with a lot of people. And then when I left and we were sort of reintroduced through a mutual friend, Abe and I sort of collaborated on so much from there. We did a lot of theatre, a lot of just talking about story and developing scripts, some of which we would probably burn now. But yeah, just creating. I think I wore quite a few hats, did some promos, still do promos, music videos and that sort of thing. Production managed a bit, AD'd a lot and loved it, and sort of drew me to where I am now, sort of knowing that producing is where I fit, and where I work best. That's how I want to tell stories going forward. So yeah.
Fantastic. So Olan, can you talk a bit about the collaboration with Abraham and how you worked to build the aesthetic for the film?
Yeah, it was a very refreshing collaboration. Again, Abe I was going to say he's a first-time filmmaker. He's not a first-timer anymore. He was a first-time filmmaker at that time. And, you know, when you collaborate with a first-time filmmaker, there is that tendency as a more experienced DP to want to be the mother and almost be a mother to the baby being the first-time director. But I think for me, one thing I fought hard to do was to honor Abe's intentions and also give him the latitude to experiment creatively with what he wanted to do with the script. I remember the first time he approached me, he did mention he wanted the shorts to be this one-take Steadicam shot. And creatively, I didn't think it was right. Logistically, it would have been a nightmare. All things said no. I believe, I did hear him out. I'm like, yeah, we can try and make it work, because I was just so keen to ensure that the magic that first-time filmmakers bring to the screen, you don't kill that. So I think that was one thing I ensured I fought for. You know, in the end, you know, Ivy was kind enough to kill that dream, which I really appreciate.
Nice to allow him to dream it.
You know what? I'm so grateful that everyone killed that dream, because within the first 5 minutes of the shoot, I just remember thinking to myself, my goodness, I'm so glad that I listened to them. This is not going to be as straightforward as I thought it'd be. And imagine we had that additional, piece to deal with. I'll do it in another film one day, but that definitely do continue.
Yeah, so it was just important to ensure that whatever interesting things he wanted to do, he had the privilege to do it again. It was his first short, so if you want to experiment, please do experiment. But one thing that was really refreshing for me was the fact that he's an actor's director. He's not one of those directors who's looking over your shoulder and, going, oh, let's go a bit tighter, or let's go a bit wider, or what lens is that? For him, it was all about the performance. And I think that carried through the actual project. I think when you watch a film, I think for me, the joy is the fact that no one goes, oh, that's a fantastic looking film. It was that's a compelling, story. People got drew into the world of this character. And I think that out of the fact that we both just agreed it was about the actors, it was about the story, the journey of these two characters. Let's just let the audience be a part of this scene. And that's, I think it was just important for us to ensure, like I said previously, there was that purity and that honesty to the work and not cloud it in camera tricks. Because I remember reading the script and it was, 15 plus pages in one space with two people sat across a table. I'm like, man, this is going to be boring. But it's a testament to how good the dialogue is and how good the actors were, that it's so riveting. I mean, I watched the film over and over again, and it doesn't feel like a very long film, given the fact, it is a long piece, but the dialogue is just so honest. And I think for me, it was all about how best we can ensure that we don't cloud the story in technology and kit. Let's just let the camera, let's just let the audience, let's just let the actors do the work.
And a testament to Olan off of the back of that, actually, in terms of when Abe was deciding what DP he was going to go with. I had worked with Olan previously and knew quite a few people that had worked with him. And something that always comes up, especially where he works with new filmmakers, is that everything he just said, is that he really knows how to guide their vision without overstepping and sort of pushing the vision in the direction that he necessarily wants it to go to. Like, yeah, I think he really has that right balance, and it was just really amazing to then see him work with Abe and him to do what he does best and allow Abe to tell the story he wanted to tell. So yeah.
Sure, just to add to that as well, and I mentioned this to Olan recently, I don't know if they've worked together now, but at the time, our executive producer, Fiona Lamptey, had never worked with Olan, and despite that, she when she asked me who's your DP going to be, she was like, "There's this guy called Olan. I think that should be your DP." And I was stunned by her reasoning, which was exactly what Abby said about how she just could sense that he would work well as the first timer and not try and overshadow their vision. And I don't know how, but she could just see that without having worked with him before. She just understood that. So it's a huge credit to you that so many people speak of you in such a way. And yeah, it was an honor to have you as part of it. You know, yeah, we'll make more films.
So I just want to ask one last question to Abraham, as we've got the questions coming in thick and fast, and please, everybody who's listening, feel free to add to them. But Abe, tell us about the film for those who may not have seen it.
Yeah, of course. No More Wings is about two lifelong friends who are catching up in their childhood favourite chicken shop in South London. And it touches on brotherhood, gentrification, and I think a really important thing that runs through it is talking about the meaning of home. And it essentially explores how two people who had all the same options in life, like I mentioned earlier, they've had the same upbringing, same kind of household, same kind of education and neighbourhood, but yet their lives turn out differently, and wanting to understand the why that could possibly happen.
Amazing. Like, going into the questions, okay, this is from Stacey. Can you talk about the significance of Jude's statement about being an example to the kids in the hood by staying home, and how that differs from Isaac's desire to branch out?
Just really interesting about that. The play that I did with Paris called The Cage, I can't remember what the line is, but there's a line that's almost identical in that same play where there's a character who says the same thing. And for me, that line is so important in that, it almost defines the question of the whole film for me, which is, do you leave home or do you stay? What's the importance of that? Like, is it selfish? Is it selfless? It's a question which, I think I fight with myself in it all the time, knowing that how can you expect somewhere to get better if those who are meant to care about it and who it matters so much to are no longer there, whether it be to reap the benefits of it getting better, but also to play a part in it getting better as well. And I'm not just talking physically, I'm talking even ensuring that people from the same environment know that it's possible to aspire to greater than these kind of neighbours we're talking about, which is, run-down estates with social housing, very working class backgrounds. So many people escape those places in terms of they grow in the way that they are, I don't want to say better than, but they I guess it's social mobility and elevating. But what does that mean if you're not essentially sending the ladder back down? And it's difficult to, I don't have the answer as to which is the right decision. Like, it's something I still battle with all the time, because as someone who loves traveling and exploring and visiting, I can't imagine staying in one place forever. But that's how I think of that. And in terms of it differing from Isaac and his look at branching out, again, it's what I just said. It's someone who has grown up some of their whole life and knows that there's more to the world, there's more to life. And hopefully it's about someone, for an individual, I guess it's about finding that middle ground and never forgetting where you're from and how it contributed to who you were, and hopefully identifying that you have a responsibility to that place and the people from those places in one way or another.
That's really interesting. I'd love this question to go out to Abraham, Paris, and Ivana, and it's from Yasmin. She says, I liked how in the film Isaac didn't appear to be better than Jude and vice versa. It really highlights free will and the numerous paths our lives can take. Do you believe one's environment and race can limit one's life's potential?
Do you want to go first? Thank you for observing that the film shows that neither of them are better than the other, because I think that was so important to me. That I think of my friendship groups again, and I think of all the people I've grown up with, and we have a range from the friend who's a multimillionaire to the friend who was me, who was juggling 3 different jobs. the other day. And when we're all in the room together catching up, we're all the same. We're all equal. No one looks down on anyone or frowns at them in any kind of sort of way. And so it was so important to me to depict them as people who saw each other as equals, even if not necessarily they saw. I think for the Jude character, and I say this thinking of the friend that is inspired by that, unfortunately, they have things that they think within themselves, and you can't control that if they think that you're looking at them in a certain way. All you can do is look and treat them in the way that you want to look at them. And to answer the second part of the question, which I believe was about the environment you've grown up in and if race can limit your potential, right? Mm-hmm. For me, I think it's impossible to say that it doesn't affect you, whether it's your environment, whether it's your race. The world, unfortunately, will play its biggest part in covering how you're seen and how you're treated. And I think, like the characters, I was quite fortunate in the kind of school that I went to. I went to a very good school, but I still lived on an estate and all of those things. And the beauty of that school was that we were all treated as equal, and you were led to believe that you could truly achieve anything you wanted. And I think that was something that was instilled in my school. It was something that was instilled in my household. Like, I was truly led to believe that. And I always tell people this anecdote about how it wasn't until my early 20s where, it crossed my mind one day that someone could pick up a script of mine, see my name, which obviously is an African surname, and make a whole assumption about that script to the point where they might even put it down and decide not to read it. And I'm not in control of those things, but it did make me think, wow, that really sucks. And hopefully, as the years go on with people like myself, like Abby, with everyone in this call, that's going to change, mostly because the industry is getting more diverse. And so the kind of people who are picking up those scripts are different, but equally the people who are in the industry, like myself, shows people that there's all types of people there. But I would be lying if I said that I don't think it plays a part, but I still, it's not as black and white as saying that it's down to the individual, because, everyone's born with different cards in their hands. And I think it's very irresponsible to suggest that, anyone can be anything. Because yes, anyone can be anything, but my goodness, it's harder if you're climbing from the bottom of the mountain compared to if you're 1 mile away from the top.
Fantastic answer. It's very interesting.
Yeah, sorry.
Please go ahead.
To piggyback on that as well. Like, black and white being the operative word, like, in a place like South London where it is such a colourful tapestry that the divides aren't particularly about race. Some of your best friends, it's basically class. It's the mood, it's the culture. And everyone is kind of accepted in that way. There's beauty in the struggle in this place that I'm trying to paint for you. And alchemy there's no shortage of it. We've grown up people who are now footballers, there are fashion models, there are, great intellectuals and people who are teachers now and doctors and all sorts, but all very much under that same weather. And I think that's partly the beauty of this place that Abe brings to the screen so fantastically. And being equals is, I think, the agreement. And anyone that kind of moves or is too elaborate in that way, then kind of you quite often learns their lesson in such a place. Yeah, and I think No More Wings does sort of play with that idea and brings up these arguments fantastically.
I love how you glow when you talk about South London, and then Abe has
such a beautiful answer.
It just, it's a beautiful. It's just beautiful to see. It really is. Paris, the original question.
I personally haven't grown up in North London. I would say similarly to what Ivano said, that I grew up in kind of the working class world, but it was very multicultural from our perspective. And the thing that, personally, I think kind of sends people, on different directions is kind of what you're exposed to. Having seen my mum and watched my mum elevate herself and tell me from a very young age where we are and where we are in the world isn't the end, and there is more to the world, and there's more things for you to be able to see and explore and do and be. That I feel like I've always kind of had a steady focal point to be able to keep trying to push forward and be more than where I come from or who my family are and things like that. As the guy said, No More Wings just in the writing and the chemistry of the characters brings that so perfectly together. Like I was saying at the beginning, these two characters, I see myself as more of the Isaac, but actually instantly I recognize the two characters in the story in me and my friends.
It sounds like you'll really connect to the story and that it really means a lot to you, you know, because you all see someone or something of yourselves in it. And that's partly why it makes it so magical, because it's so real and honest. So Stacey said, to piggyback on Yasmin's question, I found it interesting that Jude as a child was the one who seems to be more fancy-free, wanting a career in music and being naturally bright and smart, whereas Isaac was much more pragmatic. Not everyone is blessed with a natural gift. Some of us need to get a degree. Tell us about the nature-nurture element of that, making your own destiny versus maintaining the status quo. Abraham?
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you for the question, Stacey. Nature-nurture. When I think of those two characters, I think they're more similar than they realise as adults. And that's shown in their childhood, of course, where they seem pretty much like the same person. They're the same excitable young boys interested in the same things. And when people ask me, why did one person turn out differently to the other? I think in the case of those two characters, it's that Isaac was focused and Jude was always, he wanted to do, not only did he want to do so many things, but also, you had that moment as a young child when he's like, oh no, I'm done with football. Like, I'm going to go on to do this instead. And it was kind of, the character has an insatiable personality in that it's a lack of patience. And as someone who has been, it's coming up to 10 years since I decided to drop out of university and start writing. If someone had told me it would take 10 years, I would have probably done a Jude and been like, yeah, I'm done with this. I'm not doing it anymore. And thankfully, I had no idea it would take that long. And I got to a point where it was the point of no return. Like, I've got nothing else I'm going to do. I've let everything go because this is all I want to do. So I'm just going to keep my focus in the way that Isaac did. And so I do feel like it's that that's why I hesitate to say that it was the environment that caused that, considering they had such an identical upbringing, as opposed to this is who they were. This was their innate character. And I think of me and my younger siblings who have all had a pretty similar upbringing. Yeah, they are so different to me. Our personalities are there's certain similarities, but there's other elements. Like when I think of kind of drive, for example, their drive isn't similar to mine, but also I'm aware they're young. Neither of them are even 18 yet. So they're always adapting rather, and changing. And they'll be a different person in 6 months and in a year and 5 years and 10 years.
Didn't we all?
Right?
Over the years. One last question. If you have any others, please do pop them in the box. This is from B from the Caramel Film Club, who has already interviewed both Abe and Abiola. She says, your comments here sound like the set was a dream. And what are your superpowers, or perhaps another members of the team?
Ab, what's your superpower?
Off the top, I think my superpower is bringing people who are wiser and more amazing than me together to create something. I'll say that's my superpower. I think it's finding amazing people and then hopefully bringing them together to tell stories.
Good answer.
I think for me, I don't know if it's a superpower as much as it's maybe irritating, but I always, if I want to do something, that's it. So I'll call Abby and I'll be like, right, Ab, got this idea. I want to do this. I want to do this. And that's it. I don't know how to do it. That's Abby's problem. I'm the one who's decided that I've decided it can be done, even though I don't know how it can be done. It can be done. Abby, I want to do this. Let's make it happen. And I think it works really well with me and Abby in that Abby's, she will rise to the challenge, but she's also pragmatic and she'll bring me down a bit and tell me, okay, well, this can't work. I mean, why can't it work? And I'll really unpack and try to, having the chicken shop is a great example where very early on she said to me, so what's your backup plan if we can't use Morley's? And I said, why are you asking me about backup plans? We're shooting in Morley's. There isn't a second option. If it's not in Morley's, we're not making the film.
But these are the conversations we have, the phone calls. Yeah.
I think for me, it's just, always believing that something can be done. Like I always think that where there's a will, there's a way.
Christian, I think you're going a question from Christian, which I think you'll love. The ironic thing about No More Wings is that the film has taken flight and resonated with so many people, especially from across the pond. Why do you think the film has moved people all over the world, many of whom have never even been to South London?
No, I do love that question. Thank you, Christian. I think it's because I would like to think it's because of what I always strive to do with my stories, which is make them universal. Yes, No More Wings is so entirely specific in that it's the chicken shop is raw and it's set in South London and all of that. But when you strip all of that away, it's just about two friends who have grown up together and grown apart. And I think that's something we can all relate to. I've lost count of how many people have said to me, I have a friend just like Jude, who, you worry about them and you think, why have you not turned out great? Because you had all the ability in the world to turn out great. And so I think that's the reason why it resonates with so many people. Everyone has that friend who they just wish they had turned out better. But something I always say is so important to me about the film is you don't know how that person feels about how they turned out. They might be happy with how they turned out. They might be happy with the journey and the path they're on. And as much as everyone likes to assume that Isaac's life is all great and all perfect, there's little subtleties where you can see that maybe it isn't, whether it be that he mentions that, we didn't all have natural talent. Some of us had to get a degree, or whether it's the fact that he's having to check his emails at 8 o'clock in the evening. So, it's always green on the other side, but we're all carrying our crosses and dealing with our internal things that isn't necessarily always apparent to the outside world or the people about us that are slight imperfections of our life, whatever they may be.
Great. Now, Yasmin is asking, did Isaac and Jude's life goals mature as they aged, or did they change their dreams to better fit with their life? And do you feel that having big dreams as a child sets you up for failure or disappointment as adults?
That's so many questions. I'm going to
do the last one first. Do you feel that having big dreams as a child sets us up as failure and disappointment as adults?
For me, absolutely not. I've always been a big dreamer from childhood, and I always tell people that everything I've always thought I wanted to do in life, I've never for a moment thought I couldn't do it. And that's not to say I achieved it all. I wanted to be an NBA player and I never made it to the NBA, but I always felt like I could do it until I decided one day I didn't want to do it anymore. I could do it. And I think actually that having big dreams, at least for me, has set me up in a great way in terms of I just always aspire to be the best. And it doesn't mean I always am the best, but I think things have turned out all right because there's such a determination, and I think probably a self-belief as well. But again, that self-belief, sometimes I think it came from me, but then I think of some of the things that I remember I always say to people that if there's one thing I always recall my mother saying to me is that she always said to me, you're going to do great things. Like, she was always convinced. And I think about this, I'm like, this is mental. Like, why did you think this? And I remember when everything started happening with No More Wings, Mom called me. She was like, well, you do remember what I said. You were going to do great things. So it doesn't come as a surprise to her. And so I would like to believe that, essentially, I don't see how ambition sets people up for failure. I think as you grow up, you become wiser and you become more discerning of the world and measure your ambition. I wouldn't necessarily say accordingly in that it shrinks, but you weigh it up. So if we bring back basketball, at one point I realized, okay, well, I do believe I can do this thing, but realistically the odds aren't in my favor because I live in the UK and I'm 6'2" as opposed to 6'8" or something like that. But okay, what's the next great thing that I want to do? And at one point it was a lawyer, at one point it was a banker, and then finally 10 years ago I realized, no, I wanted to tell stories, and here we are. That was one part of the question. I can't remember the other two. Please forgive me.
I think you kind of answered it in essence, but I don't want to shy away from the success of the film. I mean, right off the bat, the film won Tribeca, and actually, that's an American festival. Did you realize the film would, as Christian mentioned, that it would really resonate so well with people from all around the world when you were making it? Did you feel that would happen?
Absolutely not. What I will truthfully say is that I always hope and believe that it would reach the heights that it's reached. Like when we were submitted to festivals, we only submitted to festivals which would result in us qualifying for either BAFTA or the Academy consideration. But nothing in my wildest dreams made me think that the very first festival we submitted to, which was Tribeca, that we'd get selected for it. And not only did we get selected for it, we then won Best Short at it. And yeah, to go even further, not only did it win, it was, I think there were 5 judges and all of them picked it as the #1 film. And I didn't imagine that would happen. But I think in a strange way, I've always had a great response to my writing from Americans. So part of me wonders, why was I surprised? Maybe I shouldn't have been. But at the time, I couldn't believe it.
Not forgetting the first festival also qualified the film to be considered for an Oscar. So that's a pretty big deal considering you're going your first. That's something filmmakers dream of and go to hundreds of festivals to get. So that just shows the testament of your work. Okay, we've got time for one last question from Leanne Lindsay. Please talk about the background music of the film. Who did you work with?
That was one of my favorite things. So I always say to people that I lack talent in the 2 things I love the most, which are music and football. So I'm not good at football and I don't really have any musical talent. However, it was amazing to get to flex my musical, I guess, love and knowledge in choosing the soundtrack for the film. So the first song was a song by a duo called Blase and Loxo called Top Striker. It's actually their first song. But what was so important to me about that song is it's a rap song, but they're rapping about football, and that foreshadows the story we're obviously going to discover about Jude, that he once had dreams of becoming a footballer, then he had dreams of becoming a rapper. With the second song that's featured in the film, which was P2J's Hands in the Air, that part of the film was set in 2006, and so it was important to me to pick a song from 2006. And growing up in South London, anyone who grew up there knows that song. It was an absolute anthem, and so I very fortunately managed to get the rights to that song. I grew up with his manager, and so I reached out to him. I was like, I want to get this song. I think he actually didn't reply to me just because he's always really busy. But I've got a friend who's managed by the same person, and so that producer manages makes songs for my friends. And so I was like, can you ask Pro if we can have it? It's like, yep, you can have the song. It's fine. You're happy. He's happy for you to use it. And just to take back a step with Blase and Loxo, I'm friends with those artists as well, and I'm friends with their managers, and so they were equally so happy for us to have the song. And with the final song, which honestly I was so happy and emotional when we got the rights to it, was a song called Cycle, which is in the closing credits. And the lyrics are so important, and they tell a part of the story itself. Like, it's almost, I think of the lyrics of that song as if I was writing an essay, that those lyrics are the conclusion of the essay, wrapping up exactly what you've just seen and telling you that this, where we've grown up, it's a cycle. Like, that's just the way things are. And that's by an artist called Wretch32, who's one of my favorite British rappers. And again, desperately wanted the song, didn't know what we would have done if they had said no. And I managed to get in touch with his manager, and we sent him the film, and we're like, God, we just hope they're going to let us use it, hope that they're not going to charge us a crazy amount. And I remember the day when Abby phoned me, and she was like, have you ever spoken to Zion before? I was like, no, why? And then she was like, so he watched the early cut of the film, he absolutely loved it. And the long story short is that not only did they give us permission to use the song, but again, we didn't have to pay anything. Like, they were just so in love with the film. And it was, I remember us being daunted because it was the very first cut. So, for anyone who's ever seen a first cut, it's not a perfect film in any shape or form. So for him to see that and just be so blown away and give us that support meant the world to me. So, I was so glad that in so many instances of this film, we got our first choices, whether it was the songs, whether it was my actors, whether it was Olan, and Abby never had a choice but to work with me anyway. But more importantly, especially with the cast and direct DOP and Abby, is that they were all available as well as wanting to be a part of it. And it was great to get all those songs as well and really colour the world of the film with authentic music.
We also worked with a really amazing composer, Adrian Lung. Yeah, he was just brilliant, to be honest, and came to our rescue when we realised that we needed something to fill that space.
Sure. Not only did he come to our rescue, he came to our rescue the day before we needed to submit the film. Like, that was one of the most stressful days of my life. Like, I remember just being in my room listening to score after score after score of different composers and listening to it whilst watching the film. And I remember just calling Evie about, Abs, I don't know what to choose. And she's like, well, you're going to have to choose something because there's not another suggestion. And Abby actually...
Hundreds.
But you were the one who identified it. You were like, hey, I think there's something in this. Like, just watch it a couple more times. Watch the film with the music on in the background and watch that moment. And honestly, like, I've seen the film 100 times now and it's absolutely perfect. But I remember in that moment being worried, like, it was more like the deadline's here now. But I guess sometimes that's the magic of film, that you're not absolutely certain of the decision you're making when you're making it. And you just have to trust your gut, trust the team around you that the decision is right. Because now when I watch the film, it sounds so perfect and I couldn't imagine any other score in that moment that just made it so dreamy. And just to clarify, that was the score he had that already existed. So it wasn't even like it was something specifically made for the film. And so for it to work so perfectly was a dream.
Well, I think we'll all agree that the film is a dream, and I'd like to thank the panel, Abiola, Abraham, Paris, Ivana and Olan, and not to forget all of you for taking the time to join us. We really appreciate it, and please share as much news about the film as possible. We appreciate your time, and if you need anything, please come to us. Thank you so much.
Thank
you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.